Luna's mission is to increase the knowledge about cannabis in its many facets inside and outside the industry, which leads to increased safety and demand for higher quality products. Please welcome Luna Vargas.
Obrigada. Thank you for the presentation. Boa tarde todo mundo. Um prazer estar aqui com vocês hoje. Estou vendo algumas carinhas conhecidas. Muito feliz. My presentation will be in English, so good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I just want to know how to. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about cannabis education and a little bit of my journey in this industry so far. So, okay. So I'm a social scientist. Most people don't know what social science is, and when people do know, they don't know what I do, but they're pretty much sure I'm a communist. My first master's degree was in cultural mediation. People think about tour guide in a museum, but what we actually do is try to translate one culture to another. My second master's was in anthropology and ethnomusicology. More than study tribal music, we try to translate a complex musical ritual to other cultures. That's what I did here, studying world music here in Europe, in France. And now when I'm saying I'm a cannabis educator, everybody laughs. Some people because they think it's a joke, others because they think this profession doesn't exist. Even inside the industry, believe me. Oops. Okay. So I moved to Vancouver in 2018 to research the cannabis industry. My idea at the time was to research, to be in a social transition from the illegal market to legal market. Turns out that the best part of this transition was the Cypress Hill concert to celebrate legalization in Vancouver on October 17th, 2018. One thing us social scientists do, we use as a methodology is called field research. And the first part of my field research was happened 6 months before legalization. I went to, when I moved to Canada, I went to all the conference, talks, meetings. I was like immersed in a new world for me. With top scientists like here today talking about science, their researches, also women leading the cannabis business, and of course a lot of BC buds. So for the past 4 years, my research was focused in the Canadian cannabis industry, mainly in market, because all my previous research was focused on that. In my opinion, is the best way to understand how capitalism works and operates in a new segment. Also in society, because I want to know and understand more about this transition and its effects. The object of my research was the cannabis retail. I chose this subject because cannabis retail is this connection from the whole cannabis production to the general public. And turns out that this connection is personified by the bud tenders. Bud tenders are the people doing this connection. And that's why they are pretty much a cross between a pharmacist and a regular retail professional. They are in this very important position in the market because people don't know the production, they don't know anything about the cannabis production chain. the only people the general public knows are usually the bud tenders, and they are responsible to do this bridge between uh, the the production, which is synthesizing a product, and the general public, meaning people with a lot of stigma, probably grew up in a prohibition era with a lot of stigma. Um, yeah, and they represent, that's my vision. They represent not only the companies they work for, but the whole cannabis industry to general public. And we can see this like in the CB shops here in Europe. They're usually young, in college, uneducated about cannabis, and with very limited experience with cannabis products. But although they're very enthusiastic people, and I gotta say that they're very underpaid. The current state of the industry. Oh yeah, just one thing before that. It's very important to understand, like we were talking about this morning, but tenders are the one in the front line. So they're the one helping people to picking a product, to go to the beach, to have fun, to go to a concert. But like it or not, they're the one helping people with many conditions, with chronic pain, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, and even cancer. So that's the job they're doing right now. The current state of the industry is cannabis retailers, they don't offer an educated and knowledge service. Health professionals are far from fulfilling the patient's education demands. And pharmacies are even further from being a place of cannabis education. Here in Lisbon, you can buy one flower in a pharmacy, but my question is, are they educated to explain to someone buying this flower how to use a vaporizer, how to decarboxylate a flower, or even how to roll a joint? And the same for the CBD shops here. Now we have the HHC, this new product in the market. But tenders, they should be able to talk about dosage and help people to use these products because they are in the market right now. Another thing we do as a social scientist is one methodology called participant observation, which means go to a tribe and partake their activities. So that's what I did. I started to work as a bud tender, and my second part of my field research was in a dispensary, and working, as I said, like with during a long time, not a long time, but I was going to all this conference, learning, as we just learned everything about the minor cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids. And when I first started to work as a bud tender, all this knowledge, people don't have no clue about what happening in cannabis research and science. And that's the gap we have between the cannabis science and the cannabis industry. And I'm not only talking about bud tenders in the front line, but also CEOs, presidents, and pretty much everybody in the industry. Let's change this. As a result, we have wrong information and outdated ideas about cannabis. So people not being able to achieve the full potential of the plant. People discrediting cannabis as a medicine because they couldn't increase their quality of life. And that's why I decided to develop a bud tender training program based on the science I was learning at the time, and I was learning, trying to read all the scientific papers and learning organic chemistry in English was a little bit hard. My experience in my field research in the dispensaries and my daily practice helping people and try to combine all these informations. True. Okay. It's okay? Okay. So my question is, how will companies will invest in education if they don't understand what we do and the positive effects in their business? From my experience, we have 3 types of companies approached around cannabis education. The ones who have many priorities, but they will put cannabis education at the bottom of the list. The ones who claims to do it, but they're very superficial, performing many times use wrong information, and a few doing a very good job in education staff. So usually the person who educates, they're not gonna hire, when they do educate in the dispensaries, they're not gonna hire someone, cannabis educator or someone with more knowledge to do this. It's usually someone who has more knowledge, or they think to has more knowledge. Also, they're not willing to create an educational department, and it sounds like weird because even like Apple, they have a massive education program to sell their products, and we are in this new in this new world with cannabis, and people are not investing too much in education. Just a moment. So yeah, so actually what, just come back here a little bit. Usually the companies, they understand cannabis education with a custom service, with a side of science, meaning they usually teach the difference between indica and sativa, and they try to relate terpenes to fruits, and that's the side part, the science part. So actually what we do, sorry, I'm a little bit confused with this. Okay. So actually what we do, we teach people how to think, how to cross information and choose paths in a complex matrix between what people need, different products, methods of consumption, methods of production, and cannabis culture social values. And this is very important in our industry. After work for a while in this bud tender program, I came up with a methodology called Plan to Market. And my goal with this idea is to give an overview about the cannabis from the plant to the market. And I use this plan to market in reference what we use in cannabis production, from seed to sale, soil to sale. And working as a bud tender, a cannabis educator, and a cannabis curator brought me like all these ideas to understand what we need, not only the knowledge we need, not only retail, but also in the cannabis industry as a whole. And that's when I founded Inflor, a cannabis training program in Portuguese, My idea is to bring people, nice people, and knowledgeable people to the front line in this industry. And my goal was to apply this methodology in a broad and a different demographic in different markets. Okay, so how does it work? This methodology, we have 4 phases: the trichome to flower, the flower to final product, from the product to all the cannabis segments in the market, and how to sell cannabis. This is important even if you're not touching the plant, doing something that not touch the plant directly, but it's important to understand how we operate to sell cannabis, because when you're selling cannabis, you're thinking about dosage, products, quality, indication. So it's pretty much the same way we operate to prescribe cannabis. And this is important for product development and so on. So let's talk a little bit more about this. Here are some outcomes from InFlora so far. Of course, mainly my students are mainly in Brazil, in Portugal, because it's in Portuguese. But one very interesting thing about all the markets we are right now, I have like some students working in 13 countries. And they're like working in entry level, but in many other segments in this industry. And as I said, like for me, the most important part is bringing good people to this industry, meaning knowledgeable, and also people who wants to bring cannabis values to the industry. And they have something common. They work in the front line. They know what the information. They know the information is lacking, and that's why they're investing their money to educate themselves. To educate and become educators themselves. And that's my experience here in Portugal. I have, I don't know, many students here working in CBD shops and starting education programs in their companies. So that's very important for me and for my goal in general. Here are some of my students. It's very good, like to see them here. What?
Very young.
No, it was a little bit of a joke. They're sending like kids photos for us. But yeah. So my goal in this industry is to increase knowledge inside and outside the industry. Many focus in quality and safety, as we were talking here this morning, when we talk about Delta 8 and we know like the benefits we have from this minor cannabinoid. It's also important to understand like those and how these products are made. So this is, and we are using this product before we have research on that. So that's one of the problems with the cannabis industry. The research is in parallel with the market, and that could be very challenging for us, and of course for people working in the front line, as I said, but tenders. Yeah, I already said that, like bringing knowledge and passion to this industry, promote cannabis culture, values and ethics. This is very important because we are talking about a plant. We have a long history, and like this morning, Dr. Carl Hart just told us about the prohibition around cannabis, and as an industry, we need to bring all this. We need to make social justice, and that's on us and regulators too. But as an industry, this is one of the problems we need to give solutions. So. Yeah, and my last goal, I have lots of goals, but I just put like a few here. And one of my last goals is to teach, to make a cannabis business more profitable based on science. The cannabis industry and the cannabis retailer, they're missing not to upsell with science, because it really works. And it's going to increase their profit, but also increase their life here in this industry. I'm afraid after this boom with like the CBD market here in Europe, how many companies we're going to be here in 10 years. So cannabis education could help with this too. Only Brazilians are gonna get this slide, but that's pretty much, it's a politics, it's a joke with politics, but that's pretty much what we do. We work in so many areas, not only retail, but we need to have, it's a broad, cannabis education is a broad concept, so it's hard to define. But we need cannabis education in all levels in this industry if you don't want to fail. And remember in the beginning when I talk about my background in ethnomusicology, cannabis education also work to mediate and translate different universe to another. So just like ethnomusicologists do, we try to translate what Dr. Boni was explaining here today, and everybody to regular people. And when I say like when we do training for people working for bud tenders, we are not only training them to understand cannabis and cannabis science, we are also training them to educate people and regular people and increase the knowledge about the plant and the society in general and reduce the stigma. So that's the idea. We mediate this hard science to regular people, cannabis culture to newcomers, cannabis science to product development, so on. Another thing we social scientists do, we try to create concepts and define things. So that's my try here. Cannabis education is mediation between different parts of the industry, science, politics, culture, and the general public. It's a node that connects multiple paths, giving a more complete and complex sense of the plant. More than transmitting knowledge is a process of building bridges between cannabis culture and the new era of the cannabis industry. We are here to connect times like the past, as I said, with what is happening right now in this industry and what we want for the future, our projections for the future. And it's super, because it's not ideal, like as we are talking about this here this morning, bud tenders prescribing, they're not prescribing because it's not compliant, but they're suggesting products. This is not ideal, but this is the reality. So that's why I believe cannabis education is a harm reduction for the business and for consumers in general. And finally, if the cannabis industry were the human body, cannabis education will be the endocannabinoid system, and we need the, as I said, cannabis education in all levels of this industry if we don't want to fail this plant and also all this transition we're living right now. Just to finish my presentation, I would like to tell like a quick story. But first, is there any bud tender here today? No, one? Cool. A few years ago, I was working as a bud tender in Vancouver. And I remember asking my manager to work in the back stock, because I wanted to watch a conference that was happening online. And this conference was PTMC 2019. So thank you very much. Muito obrigada.
Thank you. And again, we are open to questions. Just raise your hand so that we know where the voice is coming from. Oh, yes, we need to go to the light. So here we have a first question.
Hi, Luna. Thank you. I'm going to discuss a little bit of this tomorrow morning, but when we move forward in cannabis for adult use purposes here in Europe, what would you suggest, okay? Like, if it's not, like, because I have the same thing. If we have the bud tender on one side, we've got the pharmacist on the other side, okay? How do we bridge this? Who is the individual that should be working in a retail cannabis dispensary?
As I said, our job is a little bit of more related to harm reduction than, because in the ideal world, doctors should be doing this. So, but like in Brazil, we have a massive amount of doctors, and 2% of them, they're prescribing. I don't know in North America, this percentage, but it's not much. So ideally, we need to full legalize the plant, and then you don't need to create Delta 8, HHC. That's my opinion. The problem is we need to full legalize the plant and regulate according to the reality, and which means give access to people and give information. We need to invest in education, but in my opinion, because I was working on a dispensary many times, and people used to say, hey, how are you? I have brain cancer, and I read in the news, cannabis cure cancer, so what should I use? And I said, but and I had like no one, maybe like 3 doctors to suggest to people, and most of part of time, doctors used to go to dispensary to understand our suggestions, because they don't have. My suggestion is the government and the medicine school, they should invest in education. But meanwhile, we're gonna work with education as a harm reduction and try, but I think full legalize the plant would be a good beginning, and then we don't need to deal in the CBD market with the HHC, Delta 8, and all this, and we don't know how they make these products, where they make is not regulated. So regulate is a good start.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? No hands? Another hand. I didn't see it, but Luis is fast. There he goes. Oh, yes.
Hola, Luna. It was a nice presentation. Thank you. It was very intriguing to hear you are talking about this example of brain cancer and cannabinoids. Last year, I submitted a project as a researcher to FCT about the role of one cannabinoid receptor involved in brain cancer. It was turned down because the reviewer, who was a renowned scientist, said that cannabinoids or cannabis doesn't cure anything. So it's a stupid idea. And for us, for researchers, it's very difficult to see such an ignorance in our field and constantly mocked by the reviewer. And that's why I believe that what you do is a fantastic job. But if we cannot get money from the government right now, maybe we should turn to the industry. And this is what I wanted to ask in the morning to Dr. Hart, if he has an idea how to cope with the companies, because what I noticed that the companies don't realize that they would need to invest in research more, and I'm talking about the down to up, the bottom up version, when the researcher initiates a project proposal and the company believes in it or it doesn't believe, it doesn't matter. But right at the moment, it's very difficult to break this barrier between the scientists and or researchers and companies or industry. So it would be good to make some progress in this.
Yeah, I'm completely agree with that, because in other industries, like we have so many licensed producers making money in cannabis industry, they should be the ones investing in research, because if the company is selling like tons of Delta 8 in the US market, they should be the ones proving that it's safe and it's good. And any other industry, I don't know, like maybe soap, they need to prove that it's good for the skin. So it's not like in the government but also it's related to regulation. So regulation, we need to regulate that and say, I don't know, 10% of the profit goes to research until I don't know when. So, and we need to educate regulators too around this.
Thank you. One more question over there.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's just a different point of view.
Okay.
So I'm relatively old, but I've been in the industry for the last 10 years. And I think the industry is really, really young. We forget, and again, your generation, you don't have a lot of patience. So the cannabis industry is really young. And I understand fully everything you said, and I support it. But on the other hand, we cannot expect someone that works for Johnson & Johnson to be a bartender and explain exactly how the Imodium works. So I think we need to give it time. I think totally agree with you about the regulation, and that's something that I will talk tomorrow more, elaborate about the regulation, which again I fully support what you say. But I just wanted to give another point of view that this industry is very young. We making the road as we drive. So we all in a way pioneers.
Thank you.
I can say this, and I think we're in this magical moment where we're in this era where we are seeing all these legalizations happen, and we are here to shape this market. So that's why I'm a cannabis educator, because I think we need education to try to shape this market in a good way. Otherwise, yeah, we're seeing like the results right now, and you have completely reason when you say it's not on a bud tender to give an advice. But the problem is the cannabis plant, it's one plant. So there's the people try to create this rec market, medicinal market, but in the end it's one plant. And the only people who wants to know this difference are maybe regulators, distribution, and people who wants to to close their markets. But because people don't make this distinction, so they don't want to know if it's regulated or non-regulated. They're buying right now here in Lisbon, while we are here, in this conference hundreds of bud tenders that are selling weed, selling CBD, selling CBN, selling HHC in the regulated market, and also like many hash from Morocco on the illicit market. So that's the reality. And yeah, go ahead.
I think it's off the microphone.
Sorry, I agree with you totally. And as a Canadian, I am kind of ashamed to say that despite the fact that we have more than 100 licensed producers in Canada, no one actually invests money in education or research. So it's really, really bad on the image of the cannabis, especially when it comes to Canada, where we're supposed to be the leading country. So yeah, I totally disappointed with that. I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you once again, Luna. An applause
you.
for Luna Vargas.
Thank you.
Thank you.